Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Easy Watercolor class, part one. I'm so excited to teach this class tonight and to see so many familiar and new faces. We had a big sign-up list for this class, so welcome. So this is an ongoing weekly drawing and painting class that I teach for Michael's, and you can find the recordings of all of these classes on YouTube or on the Michael's website under fine arts classes and the archive there of online classes. And so this is a two-part class. So tonight is part one, and then next week we'll be completing this the part two of the painting. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my tabletop view, and I will go over supplies, which the supply list for tonight is very simple. I was like, oh, I guess that's why I called it Easy Watercolor. So I was preparing all my supplies and realized I kept the supply list very simple for you too. Okay, so don't forget to tag your work with those hashtags, make it with Michael's or Michael's classes, and you can follow me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art. I am also planning to do a brief little Q&A after class tonight on my Instagram. So if you want to take note of my Instagram handle, Adrienne Hodge Art, real quick, and then right after class is over tonight, if you have any lingering questions, I'll pop on Instagram Live for just about 10 minutes there and answer any questions you may still have after the class. And if you miss that, you can always find those as well on my Instagram under the little video tab on my profile is all my past Q&As. Used to do those after every class, and now I'm getting back to doing that. Okay, and then here's a few of my business cards with some of my work using primarily calligraphy ink. I'm also on Facebook, Adrienne Hodge Fine Art. So you can follow me there as well if you're interested. Okay, and then the supply list, we are using just a few things. So we've got these Princeton Aqua Elite brushes. We've got size 6 and size 1. And then I grabbed this 1/2-inch flat brush as well. And then I realized I didn't pay attention when Chanel was reading off the supply list to me if I had that flat brush on there, but we'll probably get most of the job done with these two brushes anyways, these two round brushes. Y'all let me know if I had a flat brush on there as well. Or if you want to grab an extra brush, you definitely can. Let me move my little image down into the screen a little better. Okay, so we've got those brushes. We've got the Artiste watercolor paper pad. And then we've got this Artist Loft watercolor. And this was sent to me by the folks at Michael's along with some other stuff to test out and I use for classes. And if you can't find this exact same looking pan of watercolor paints on the Michael's website, you can definitely find something comparable, but that's what I will be using. And then we have our reference photo, and I was having a few technical difficulties getting that pulled up on my iPad here, so I think I'm just going to reference it on my phone again for us, but you should have a copy of that reference image. It looks like this, and so I'll be referring to that photo, and you can have it, printed out or on a digital device in front of you, since I probably will not be able to get it, perfectly on the screen for you to refer to on the screen. All right, and then we are going to want some water cups for our watercolor paint, and then a paper towel. I've got some shop towels here. Any paper towel will do fine. And then if you don't have a lid with your watercolors that's big enough for you to mix up some colors, then I recommend grabbing, a plastic palette if you have that handy, or even paper plate would work fine. if you need something like that to mix your colors. Okay, any questions about supplies before we dive in here?
No questions so far.
Okay. All right. I was going to try to mess with my iPad again while I answered a question, but I'm just going to deal with the photo being on my phone. Last week, I forgot my iPad at my studio, and this week I have it, but for some reason can't get the photo over there onto it. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to switch from this lovely example here. So this is what we may end up with by the end of class number 2. The image of what you may have as your result at the end of class number 1 tonight was the image that was used to advertise the class. So I'm sure you saw it when you were signing up for the class. It's going to be a much more, less details on it, and sort of the first couple of layers of this painting. And I always say you may end up with something like this because results may vary. You are going to have results that are going to reflect where you are in your watercolor painting journey. And I'm definitely going to show you how I got to here in some very step-by-step and straightforward, using step-by-step and straightforward instructions. But, it may take some practice. It may take multiple attempts. And just, always want to manage your expectations of what your results may be like, and just try to make your expectations be more that you're going to have fun and you're going to learn a cool new process, and make it more about that and less about the product. Because I notice in all my years of teaching adults that the more pressure that we put on ourselves to have a certain result, the more likely that's going to creep in psychologically as we're working and take away from the fun of the process. So always just want to say that, especially with so many new folks joining tonight. Okay, so yeah, because that being said, this process is going to be maybe a little different than a process that you have used before, so it may be very new to you. And a couple of things that I usually do when I'm teaching a class like this, I'm not doing tonight. So for one, we're not doing any sketching underneath. Notice I did not put pencils or a sketchbook on the supply list. I also did not put tape on the supply list, so we're not taping it off. We're not drawing boxes to create like these margins. We're just gonna go for it, y'all. We're gonna just paint these shapes that we're seeing in this photograph directly onto our paper. And we're gonna really just kind of throw ourselves in the deep end here and see what happens. And I think it's I'm gonna do it in a very straightforward and simple, easy way. But if you are one of those people that that you would much rather have some sketching underneath, or you would like to grab some tape and tape off the shape of the rectangle, the frame of the photograph, stuff like that. If you need your emotional support tape or your emotional support pencils, grab them now, because we're not using them. Okay, any questions with that added?
So we do actually have a few questions. First, I don't know if you already said anything about this, because there's a lot of questions in chat. Some people are not using the same brand watercolors as you. Do you have any comments about that? Anything?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, any watercolors are completely fine. We're only mixing up 6 colors here, and two of those colors are probably in whatever set of watercolors you have, and that's a yellow, a golden yellow, and a or more of this lemon yellow, I would say. So a light yellow and black. That's 2 of the colors. And then we're going to need to mix up a kind of a grayish blue. I'm going to walk us through all of this, but as long as you've got blue, yellow, red, and black, you're good. And I doubt your watercolor set does not have those colors. So any watercolor set you have is totally fine. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look exactly like this one. I'm just aware that this was something that was sent to me by the Michaels folks, and might not look exactly the same on the website or in the set that you have. It might not look identical, but it's going to have the same. I think we'll get the same results. And
Okay.
yes, use mixed media
Awesome.
paper. Sorry, I see that question from Katzen. You can use mixed media paper. You can use a different watercolor paper. It doesn't have to be identical to what I have.
Okay. So we have two questions about 140-pound watercolor paper, or LB, or I'm sorry.
Yes.
So I have 140 LB watercolor paper. Is it better to use a smoother or more textured side for most paintings?
You're going to use the more textured side of the paper.
And then the other one is was wondering, it's the first time watercolor painting here. Was wondering if I needed to remove the paper from the watercolor paper journal, or could I leave it in? Not sure if it would bleed through.
Yeah, that's a great question. Since we're not using tape, I do recommend leaving it on the block or the pad. If you tear the paper out, then you might want to put some tape down on all sides and tape it down to the surface that you're working on, just to keep it from buckling. But again, we're not using the entire piece of paper. We're kind of doing more of like a small thumbnail. So I don't think you'll have too many issues, even if you already tore a sheet out and want to use that sheet that you tore out. It's fine either way. But yeah, you might just tape it down if you're finding that it's buckling, or use it on the pad so that we reduce that issue from happening.
Okay, I think that's it for now.
Oh, okay, great. All right, let me switch back. Okay, so I'm just gonna dive in here, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mix up and match these colors that we're seeing here. So I created a very limited palette of these just 6 colors based on what I'm seeing in this photo. Although we could definitely probably pick out some more colors in this photograph. Also, I'm noticing, just like looking at the image of the photograph on my Zoom screen, that it's showing up on the screen with a lot more purples and pinks that I'm seeing in the photo. To me, the photo feels like there's a lot more of like a bluish gray and blue in the sky and more of a gray on the clouds. But you can always exaggerate these colors if you prefer. So that's a good reminder while I'm on that point. But I wanted to keep this very simple and straightforward tonight. So I just picked out these very few colors that I'm seeing in the sky. And then we're going to use mostly black and mostly black on this the trees. Although the more I'm looking at it, I guess I mixed up kind of like a darkish black green. So we are going to use kind of some green, even though that looks very black there. It's actually got a bit of a green hue to it, just to make it a little more dynamic. I find that using straight black can sometimes make things feel very flat, and just adding a hint of a color like blue or green, and since these trees are green, adding a little bit of green to that black is going to really just give it a little extra dimension. And then I'm seeing a lot of yellow down here at the bottom of the sunset, in the little keyhole spaces in between the trees and on the edge of the clouds. And then I'm seeing this kind of orangey color at the edge of this kind of reddish orange at the edge of where the yellow disappears. It turns into this red orange for me. And then this very red violet color, this very pinkish purple color throughout the clouds and leading up into this gray. And then we've got this very subdued light gray for the sky. So those are the 6 colors, and we're not going to use any other colors except for maybe we'll use more black for the power lines, and that'll be next week when we add those power lines. We are going to be using the paintbrush for those power lines though. So if you are worried about your dexterity being able to draw those thin lines with a paintbrush, I'll do some practice on a separate piece of paper and show you how to, practice being able to make a thin line like that. But you might want to get a pen, but make sure that you're using a permanent ink pen if you plan to paint on top of it after that. But we're going to be doing that as the last thing. So any illustration pen would work fine as a substitute, but I'm going to be doing it with the paintbrush because I wanted to keep it simplified with the supplies tonight. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to mix up these colors. We're going to create a little palette off to the side here, and we're going to make our swatches on the side of the paper, just like I did here. And then we're just going to go for it, layering our first couple of layers of the sunset based on the shapes of the colors that we're seeing. And that's probably where we'll land by the end of the class. And then we'll continue next week building our layers to create the rest of the sunset and the clouds, and then adding the power lines, like I said, with the paintbrush. So I'm going to grab my medium paintbrush, that size 6, and I'm going to use that for all of my mixing of my colors here. And I've got my Watercup handy, and I've got my paper towel handy. And if you want to do this palette, these little swatches off on a second piece of paper and do your painting on a separate piece of paper, that is up to you. You never have to do things exactly like I'm doing. And like I was saying before, if you wanted to exaggerate your colors and make even your colors different than me, you totally can. If you're like, oh, I really like this reddish purple and I want to use more pinks and purples than gray in the clouds, then you can totally go for it. Okay, so the first color, since I was talking about it before, I'll just start with this yellow. Although I guess I should probably go in order of in order of how I did before. And yeah, let's go in order of the colors as we see them in the sky. So I don't know why I just got excited about the yellow and just went for it. Okay, so let's start with blue, but we want to make a very light, kind of subdued blue, since the sky that I'm seeing is at, it's dusk right here, and it's sort of that time of dusk when maybe like 20 minutes before the clouds had a lot of pink and purple on them, but now it's faded. And it's mostly just like, grayish blue sky, and the clouds are starting to turn a little more gray. So let's see if this is the right blue. That's a pretty vibrant blue. So I want to mute that a little bit. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to find my black, and that is not black, that's purple. Very deceiving sometimes on these palettes. Which one's black? There it is. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my black and I'm going to water that down. And I'm just going to keep watering it down until I can get it to look really light gray. And then
hey, Adrian, do you know the name of the blue?
I do, because I have this handy little thing. Hang on. Should have been looking at this to figure out where my colors were. So it's the cerulean blue, is the one that I just grabbed. I've got this cool thing that tells me what colors were in this palette. So your cerulean blue, you might try it with a couple of different blues. Like, let's see if this is going to give me the blue that I want. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm looking for a really grayish blue, because I want it to feel nice and subdued. But since we've got some different watercolor palettes in the mix, let me try it with my phthalo blue and see what that looks like. Pretty sure I used the cerulean blue before though. We've been talking about color mixing a lot in the last several classes. The class last week on gouache, sunflowers, we got into color mixing quite a bit. So I am planning a sort of color theory 101 class to be able to refer back to as going forward in these classes. So if you're anxious for that, that'll probably be sometime in November. I'm in the middle of planning that right now this week. But yeah, it's always good to experiment with color a little bit and not get so hung up on, you know, really use your flexible thinking when it comes to color mixing. So when I just mixed the phthalo blue, I got with the gray, I got something like that, and that's the cerulean blue. So they're really not too far off because we're just mostly using a super watered down gray and then just adding some blue to it. I think I'm still going to go with the cerulean one because it's going to be a little lighter, but keep in mind things look different on paper than they do on the palette. So that's why it's always good to paint a little swatch of them and then see what the swatch looks like.
I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is above your paper is just your, like you're dipping into your water, right?
Correct. Yes.
And then the other question is, can you explain a little bit how to use the water when you're mixing the colors? Like, how are you using the water?
Okay. So this is one of those things it's that I say a lot when I'm teaching watercolor is, you know, it's right there in the name of the paint, watercolor. So I'm adding a lot of water. So yeah, I've got my water cup right here and I'm just steadily dropping water onto these colors to thin them out and to create what's called a wash. So that's what we're doing as we're layering our initial layers tonight. What we're about to do is we're going to layer thinned out washes of these colors. So I'm just adding water to them. So to make that black look gray, I just added a lot of water. Was there another question? Or was that it for now?
I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so now let's make this this gray, which the more I'm looking at it, we want a little bit of blue in there too. So I'm gonna use this other one that I just mixed with the phthalo blue, that darker blue, and I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to it. There we go. That's what I'm looking for, is something more like that. So just a little bit more darker blue in it, and then a little bit more gray. So a very grayish blue. And this is the color where this is, you know, I was saying dealer's choice. Like if you are like, nah, I don't like that bluish gray. I want my clouds to be more of like a purplish gray, or, you know, play around with your colors and you decide if you don't want them to be so gray. I like it because I think using that gray really helps to create the contrast in this little composition, especially since we're keeping it so simplified. If we were to use a whole bunch of vibrant colors on the whole thing, I don't think it would create that same contrast that's happening by using these more subdued blues and grays. So even if these colors feel a little boring, I think the boring really helps to contrast the vibrancy of the other colors we're going to use. Okay, so the next one is that yellow I was so excited about that I was jumping right to it. So it's the lemon yellow is how it's listed on this palette. And I'm just scooping some out with my paintbrush, and then I'm going to take it over to a part of my palette. And I do have 2 water cups, by the way, just so that I'm being super transparent. And I'm mixing my lighter colors in one and my darker colors in the other. So that could be helpful to anybody. I know a lot of people get frustrated when their water cup turns like, you know, dark gray after mixing up stuff like that. And then they're trying to get a nice yellow to happen. And then there's gray going on. So they want to get a new cup of water. Just having 2 cups of water is a great way to keep your light colors nice and light. Okay, so we're just painting a swatch of that yellow. We're not doing anything special to that yellow. So just a nice, I did add a little bit more thickness to my yellow to make it like really pop nice and bright. Although it's not looking that bright on the screen to me. Sometimes that is just the nature of Zoom, but you want a nice, bright, vibrant yellow there. Okay, so now let's get a red violet to happen. So this pinkish purple. So I'm going to take some of my red that's just listed as red. It's not, there's nothing special about it. It's not crimson or vermilion. It's just listed as red. So it might be like, if yours are not labeled, look for one that looks like a fire engine red. And then we already have some blue here that we can mix that with to try to get our violet to happen. Or we could just use our violet that comes in our set. So you can try it a couple of different ways. Let me see. Or we actually have a, like I was trying to keep it simple so that if you had a different palette that you could still get these colors. So even though I have kind of a reddish violet in this set, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to mix this together so that I can help you to get this red violet to happen. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and use some of the blue that I already have here. And I always like to take colors to a separate area on the palette. That way I can like still, you know, if I were to just add red to that, then it's going to turn it all purple. Okay, so let's see what I get when I do that. I want it to be a little more pink than that. Let's see. I just said I wasn't gonna turn this whole pile of blue purple, and then I did it anyway. That's a little darker than I want it to be. Let me try it with one of these other reds. Oh yeah, I'm gonna try it with my, this is my Rose Madder. So if you have one that's a little bit more on the pink side, that's the one that I'm gonna use. And mix it with the blue. There we go. Okay, so I mixed it with more of my pink, more magenta red that I had in the palette that's listed as Rose Madder. And then I added the cerulean blue, and that got it to be that really red violet. All right, so I'm gonna paint a little swatch of that. And then now we're looking for an orange, and I have an orange already, or I could mix an orange by taking my yellow and then adding some red to it. Let's use that same pinkish red. All right, yeah, that's a nice vibrant orange.
I have another question for you, Adrian.
Okay.
So in that last color, when it was too dark, when the red and blue became too dark, could you just add white to lighten it if you don't have like a rosy color?
You can try that, although it's likely that that is just going to give you more of like a lavender purple, it's going to give you just a lighter version of that deeper violet that I was getting. So if that's happening to you and you don't have if you only have one red, maybe water it down, or maybe just use red, because I think the pink in that, the pink that's showing up in that sunset is going to get the job done more than a lavender. The lavender is going to just kind of blend in with your gray a little more, but we want something that's going to pop against that gray. And I would go with a really watered down red that just feels pink, or maybe, you know, red with white so that it feels pink before I would, you know, create more of a lavender purple. I hope that makes sense.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
So the last swatch you just did looks like a dusky rose on screen. Is it supposed to be more orange?
Yeah, it's supposed to be more orange. It's looking orange on my palette, and yeah, I mean, it's the nature of Zoom. It's, you know, you can play around with the brightness on your screen a little bit. Like I just turned up the brightness on my computer screen and it's looking more reddish orange to me now, on my screen. So maybe do the same on your computer screen, and that might affect how these colors are showing up on your screen. But it's definitely a reddish orange. So far I've got you want a light kind of grayish blue, you want a darker grayish blue, or a gray with just a hint of blue. You want a really lemon yellow, you want a pinkish purple, and you want a red orange. And then the last one we're going to do here is a black with green in it. So I'm going to use my black, and then I'm just going to add some green to it, and I'm going to use the, let's see, the medium green that I have here. The phthalo green would probably work as well. Let me scooch it over. I'm using every square inch of this palette I've got here. So I'm watering down the black a little bit, mainly just so that I can see when I add the green to it, how it's affecting it. Actually, I'm going to use the phthalo green. I mean, really all of them are going to work because the black's going to just eat it up. It's still going to look black. It's just going to have a hint of green to it. It's going to have a little bit more dimensionality, like I said before. So, and watercolor looks so much different wet than it does dry. So just adding this little bit of green to this black it maybe is not going to show up, like it might not look like I added any green. When we water it down, we're going to feel it, you know, in this initial wash that we're going to do. And even as we build it up, I mean, I definitely see that hint of green coming through for me, like all over this composition in the trees. And it definitely adds something that just using the direct black, I think wouldn't quite do. So we're just adding a little bit of something extra there. Okay, any more questions about the colors before we start painting this thing?
I think you're good to go.
Okay, cool. All right, so here's the part where I don't want to lose anyone. So, you know, if you want to just watch me first and then jump in, there'll be a recording of this later, so you can always go back and watch it again on YouTube if I go too fast. But I am going to go kind of fast because what I'm going to do is I'm not drawing this rectangle, right? So instead of drawing the rectangle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this shape of the blue on the paper with a little right angle on it. Then I'm going to paint this shape of gray right here, and I'm going to put a straight line on the side of it. Then I'm going to paint this shape of the trees, and I'm gonna have a couple of right angles at the bottom of those tree shapes. You are totally welcome, like I said, to use a pencil or to use some tape and tape off a rectangle or sketch it out, you know, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to make it super simplified here. Okay, so the other reason for keeping these colors kind of watered down as I was working is that I've still got the colors there and ready to go, so I can paint with them. Although let me just make a little bit more of this sky color just so that I don't run out. All right, so I feel like I say this all the time, but it's worth repeating. A paintbrush is like a sponge. And anytime we have a sponge that is full of soap and water and we press down on it, all the soap and water is going to come out. And if we just barely press on the soap and water, barely press on the sponge, only a little bit's going to come out, right? So the more we load up our brush with the paint, it's like really filling up your sponge with soap and water, right? So I'm just mixing it around in that little puddle, and notice I've got a nice big puddle of this going. Okay, so that I've really loaded up my brush and I can make this stretch here. And then I'm just gonna very quickly, I'm gonna paint this shape that I'm seeing of blue in the sky. I'm going to fill it in very quick here. So I'm going to kind of draw it with my paintbrush, and I'm going to go almost all the way over here. Let me scoot over here. Pull this down so it's nice and centered on the screen. So I'm looking at this overall shape of the blue that I'm seeing, and I'm going to kind of draw the shape of the cloud. And I'm going to keep it just like these little half circle shapes. Think of like grapes stacked together, and then like that. So I've got shape like that. And then I'm just going to quickly fill it in with my light bluish gray. I'm grabbing that color and I'm just quickly filling it in, and it's very watered down. It's very washy. Not a whole lot to it. So we're really taking a less is more approach to this little painting today. And we're really simplifying a process here. So if it should be easy, if it's not easy, we might be overcomplicating it. I know I definitely do that. I was staying at an Airbnb recently and I could not find the extra bedding for the pull-out sofa. And I was being so obnoxious and messaging the host. I'm looking everywhere. And guess where they were? They were in the most simplified place. They were inside the pull-out couch. The couch just pulled out in a way I had not pulled on. And that was it. So super simple, folks. We drew a right angle. We drew some little puffy cloud shapes like the absence of clouds. Some little kind of half circles like grapes stacked on top of each other. We went in and down right here and then up again, and then we filled it in. That's all we did. But yeah, I was like, wow, I really know how to complicate a simple thing. So if you're feeling like something crazy just happened, you might be me just not pulling on the couch hard enough. Okay. Moving on. All right, so now we want to paint this big gray cloud area, but we also want to keep in mind that we're going to leave some room for the orange, and we're going to leave some room for the yellow. So we're not going to paint any gray down here, because if we were to get gray down here, then that's going to turn all of these colors gray. So it's deceptive. You know, I made you think that I had gray clouds all the way down here, but I didn't. They may have gotten a little like muddied in some spots because the gray that I painted here bled a little bit, and that's okay if that happens to you. But I'm going to paint the gray all the way to about here-ish. And then I'm going to do gray kind of at the edge right here. And then this whole bottom area, like think about a heart shape right here going down into this tree line. Here, I'll kind of sketch it with my pencil. See the heart shape? This is what we're going to leave alone because this is going to be orange and red, orange, and pinkish purple and yellow. Like a snow cone. Gonna be a snow cone down there.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
How do you prevent an outline from the first lines and shape of the clouds you drew?
Well, I did paint an outline. You mean like it's a darker color of blue next to your line? Here, I'll read
She
the
said
chat.
yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Um, try to keep it the same color. That's why I mixed up a big puddle of that color so that everything was the same. And then I painted it really quickly to keep it continuous. It's the best I can do. Yeah, if you went a little slower or if you had to like make more of that color halfway through and the color that you made the second time was slightly different, then that could definitely affect it. So this time, but here's a fix for it. So this is easy cover up because this gray that we're about to add is going to be darker. So now you just make sure you go over whatever, outline you don't like with this gray. Okay, so I loaded up my brush again, this time with the darker gray. Got it fully loaded up here. Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit, let me get like the full Polaroid picture here going. So see how the frame kind of goes over just a tiny bit before it hits that right angle? The cloud extends out just like a little bit further. So we're trying to keep these lines straight. If it's not perfectly straight, don't worry. My other one was not straight either. So we're embracing some wonkiness here. Okay, so again, and we're not doing the silhouette of the trees yet. So we're just going about right to the top, or actually a little bit higher than where the heart shape was, but that's okay if you went a little farther like I just did. So kind of right about where the heart shape is. And then we'll just think about where that tree line's gonna go. But then also we want to leave the heart shape alone. So we're gonna go something like that. And then here's where I am getting a little next level, but just stay with me. I'm gonna kind of follow the line using a curved brush stroke. So I'm gonna kind of curve into the shape of the cloud that I created and think about like painting like a little crescent moon or half circle as I do it. And yeah, if you kind of create a little outline as this happens, that's totally fine. And then I forgot one thing. We want to grab this out with a paper towel. You want to leave a little edge alone right there so we can put the yellow in. So if you already painted it like I did, just grab it out right now with a paper towel while it's still wet. And then we'll go ahead and fill in the rest of this really quick with gray. So the most advanced thing that I did there was I just kind of went into the shape of the cloud and like I kind of pushed the outline a little bit right there. And then, yeah, left a little blank space for where I want to have a little yellow edge. Forgot about that yellow edge. That really creates a lot of contrast right there. And then, yeah, we want to try to keep a straight line over here on the side, but if it gets wonky, I'm not too worried about it. All right, and that's it. And then if you want to grab your paper towel and like dab into it a little bit more just to get some texture, some like variation in that gray to happen, that could be cool. And that'll really give it, that gray like a different dimensionality right there as well. All right.
Hey, Adrian, we have a few people asking if you can try to keep the image on the screen so that they can see what they're matching.
I can try, yes. It's just always a little challenging to manage all the things and do that. That's why I try to always provide those photos to you. All right, yes, I will try to keep it on there. It also keeps going away to my screensaver, and okay, so I put a little bit more gray over there on that other cloud, but then I realized we don't really need that too much. We're about to put the tree line over there. Okay, so now let's get the tree line going, and then we'll come back up here and add those other colors. Or you know what? We're going to do the other colors first. What am I saying? Do the other colors first because we don't want the tree line to bleed into those colors. Okay, so let's make sure we have enough of our reddish colors and our red orange. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep that. I feel like I'm balancing a lot of things on the screen. I don't know if you're going to be able, I'll try to keep the image there while I'm painting as well. Okay, so we need that reddish violet. So yeah, I can't have it all. Sorry. I can't have you seeing my palette and the painting without putting my image on top of my painting, which I don't want to do. It's kind of hard to fit it all on the screen at the same time. Doing my best. Okay, let's get more of that reddish violet going because mine kind of dried up. So we'll make a nice big puddle of that, although we really don't need a ton of it. Not as much as the other colors that we were just using. And then we had a little bit of blue with that to get it to be that pinkish purple. Okay. All right, so we're gonna scrub that in down here, and we're gonna leave some room for this orange as well. So we want it kind of for that yellow still, by the way. So make sure you're doing that same thing. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some of it up here into the gray. We're going to put another layer on this next week. So this isn't it for these clouds. This is just our initial layer. Okay. And then in all paintings, there's always a little bit of what I like to call a teenager phase where things maybe feel a little awkward and we're not sure if it's ever going to look right again. We're in that right now. So I tried to, in that example photo, make it look as still, luxurious in that step one picture. But if it looks a little awkward as you get these layers on there, trust that it's going to come together when we get the final layers on next week. All right, so I'm coming in with that orange. And I'm going to let it go ahead and bleed with my pink a little bit. If you have some sort of like weird edge right here with the gray and the pinkish purple, you can maybe go into that a little bit, and feel free to like add as much or as little of this as you want. You can also grab some water and kind of bleed what you're doing a little bit more into the gray. You can grab your paper towel and dab it if it's looking like too, kind of stacked right there and you want it to feel a little more organic. Do whatever you got to do to make those things feel a little more seamless if you're getting a seam like I am in a couple of spots. We can also extend out those trees and cover up any weirdness later. All right, and then that's it for the orange because we don't want to overdo it. We want to leave some space for this yellow to come in at the bottom and also into the edges there. So this is our little point of our heart down here. And we're really going to let that bleed into that orange. So I'm really helping it along with some water to get it to do that business. And then I'm going to come up here to these edges that I was saving. And I'm going to let that yellow fill in those gaps, but I'm going to also let the yellow bleed into the other colors right there. And if you're liking the way the yellow looks in all these places where we're putting it, and you want to add it to a few more spots, feel free. And yeah, like I said, trust that any of these awkward moments, we're going to camouflage them next week when we add our other layers. And this is an area where if you were to keep going while this is all super wet and feel like you're going to fix some stuff at this stage, that's when everything can end up getting super blurry and muddied and, you know, blurred together. And one of the primary rules for successful watercolor painting is to work in layers and to let your first layer dry before you do the next layer. So we've got more layers that we're going to add to this. And when we add those next layers, we're going to do it in a strategic way that's going to cover up any weird moments. So if you've got yellow bleeding into orange, bleeding into pink, and then you're gray, but it looks kind of funny in some spots, I would say just leave it alone before I would try to start blending and fixing things right now. Okay, how are we doing on time? We got 7 minutes. That's plenty of time to get our tree line going. Okay, so we're going to come over here to our blackish green that we made. And I'm just making another pile of it, adding some water to it. But this one I don't want to be too thin and washy. I want it to be pretty dark and thick, but I still want a lot of it. So just grabbing my water from my water cup. I'm going to even pull my water over here so I can just drop it on top and make a nice little puddle happen. Okay, that's probably pretty good. Okay, so this is where we want to get these other two right angles in here. So I'm just going to draw my right angles, and this darker color is the easiest to, you know, cover up. And, you know, if I don't draw like the right shape at first, it's going to be easy to, like, since it's so dark, to draw it again and cover it up. All right, I maybe extended my tree line a little farther down than I wanted to, but that's fine. We'll just pretend these trees are bigger than they are. But in the photograph, the tree line stops, like the bottom of the frame stops right there at the bottom of our heart point. So like the tree line, I should have went like this, but I extended out a little farther. So I'm just adding extra trees. And yeah, I can definitely see the green in this right now. It's showing up pretty dark black on my Zoom screen, but on my paper, I'm seeing the green in it. You can always add some black if you want it to feel, you know, darker and more silhouetted. You can always add another layer when this dries. It's definitely better, and I've had years of watercolor experience to back this up, that letting your first layer dry, even if you're not satisfied with it immediately, let it dry and then add another layer, because trying to stack multiple layers on top of each other just usually creates a situation that, you know, makes the paper buckle and pill and starts to do things that are not maybe what you are wanting from the texture. of the painting. Okay, so we're not going to worry about all these details at the edge of the trees. The one thing that I would have done differently doing this over again, and I totally should not do it again this time, was I meant to leave some like more keyhole spaces in between here. Let me see. I think I can still do it right here at the edge. But we can always add these back in too with the yellow on top, and it'll still be pretty convincing. But I'm just kind of leaving some little keyhole spaces of blank paper to fill in with yellow, because there's a few moments there where you can see the yellow peeking through. And so I was like, oh, when I do this again, I need to leave keyhole spaces. And I totally did not just do it. But let's leave some at least here at the edge as we fill in the rest. So I'm basically just kind of painting some little circles in a few spots. Just very arbitrarily. They don't even have to be in the same spots as the other one. We just want that same effect to show up here. And then once I've got a few little keyhole spaces accounted for, then I'll just fill those in the rest of the way. And then, yeah, this little edge, all these little detail leaves, we're going to add those last next week. So we're not worried about them. We're basically just creating another little cloud here of the tree line. And if this is dry for you, you can go ahead and go on top, and you could even kind of make some more keyholes happen right there if you wanted. You know, and feel free to alter the shape of this tree line as you see fit. But once you're satisfied with all your little keyhole spaces, we're just going to fill in the rest of this tree line shape that we left blank with our greenish black. And then, yeah, all these little details of the leaves that are coming off, we're going to do that last next week. That's going to be something that we're going to do with our fine point brush there at the edge. So that is it for the first layers. And the hardest part is leaving it alone right now once we get this all filled in, and resisting the urge to like fix something with those clouds, because this is going to dry and it's going to look so much different when it's dry. And we're going to have an opportunity to add those next layers next week in a way that's going to camouflage anything that you're not happy with about the clouds. So feel free to alter your tree line shape however you need to fill in those gaps. Leave a few little keyhole spaces for the trees. I'm sorry, for the sky to shine through. And then next week we can just, you know, when this is all dry, we can easily drop some yellow and some pinks and oranges into those little keyhole spaces and make them feel like the sky is coming through. And in a perfect world, I would have gone ahead and painted some yellow and orange down in there, and you know, you would already see the yellow and orange peeking through, but I totally forgot about the keyhole spaces again until we got there. All right, I'm have to resist the urge to keep filling things in down here. All right, so that's where we're gonna leave it for class number 1. I'd love to see where your paintings landed right now, if you want to hold them up and Chanel can spotlight you. And then if you have any lingering questions, you can join me for that Q&A right after class. Oh, and I realized that we've gone a minute over here, but I'd love to see some of your examples real quick before we go. Oh, there's my buddies, Reagan and Sherry. Nice to see you. Oh, those look great. Let's see. Yeah, that's looking good. I like that y'all did them on small paper sizes too. Those look lovely. All right, very nice. Yeah, I love those little little holes that you left for the sky. Those clouds are looking really dramatic too. I love it. Okay, yeah. That's looking great so far. Great starts. I know we got to be patient because we're all excited, but now we got to wait until next week. Oh, you got a little drip when you held it up. That looks great. If you want to catch those drips with your paper towel, those colors are looking great. All right, got a lot more purple going on those clouds. I love the pink too. We can add some more of that pink too to like pull some of those shapes and colors together next week as well. Thank you. Yeah, that's looking good. That's a great start. I know you just have to have faith that those stacked colors on those clouds are gonna come together. Yeah, just let it dry. I see Ken saying to everyone, you can revive it next week. It's better to let it dry and then go back in and amend things with the second layer than to try to keep going when it's super wet. All right, very nice, Sarah. Okay, I don't want to take up too much of anybody's time. We're 3 minutes over here. Thank you all so much for sharing. And if you want to join me on Instagram, I'll be over there for 10 minutes answering any lingering questions you might have about this process. Thank you. And thank you, Chanel, our moderator. See you all next week.